my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in today's video, sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, I want to give you the very best legendary commander investment order if you're a new player. And I'm showing you all these commanders that I've maxed. Because yes, I have maxed a large number of commanders in this game, with few exceptions. And so not only have I played for 7 years, maxed a bunch of commanders, played and lost a bunch of troops, I've seen metas come and go. And I know that if you follow an optimal path for commander investment, then you can set yourself up for success in this game in a really major way. So let's get into it, okay? You can see I've lost 127 million tier 5 troops. Woohoo! Yeah, so the thing that's really crazy about the endgame and Rise of Kingdoms, and you're probably watching this as a new player wondering, okay, which commander do I invest in first, Chisgule? Is a couple things. First of all, there's this building called the Museum in the endgame. This building lets you get more stats onto heroes from the early game to make them more relevant in the endgame. So there are heroes that actually get incredible buffs from here. The problem is that it's going to take currency that you'll get. They're called exhibit coins and relic coins. They're going to be limited. So a part of the plan I'm going to give you today is going to account for the fact that you're going to use this museum system to enhance some of the heroes in the end game so they can stand the test of time. That's a part of how they'll do that. The next thing we need to talk about is the fact that now commanders come at a new tier of power, okay? They're technically still legendary commanders, but don't be fooled, they punch at mythic level strength. Now, this has kind of always been the case that periodically we get a jump in power, but this commander, QSH, marks the biggest jump in power we've had in quite a while. In fact, I maxed this on my small account, which is about 100 million power, and got some really incredible trades. I'll switch over there so I can show it to you. Now, I'm mentioning this because commanders are going to come out that have a disproportionate level of power, which means that now more than ever, you want to be setting yourself up for this new sort of tier of commander that is coming into the game. And it could just be that QSH is a one-off in terms of his power level, but I don't think that's going to be the case. So now we've got one super busted archer, and when you get to the end game, I want you to be ready to have archers, infantry, and cavalry, and even siege, so you can take advantage of the best commanders from each troop type. Now, the next thing you need to know, don't worry, I'm giving you all the building blocks for the end game that you need to know about, is there's going to be this system called the armament system. The armament system is a way to get a bunch of extra stats. I guess it should be back on my main account where I have far more impressive armaments. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you're going to pull for armaments for a specific formation. Formations have a bonus. Think of this like you're customizing your army. All right. You might want skill damage. You might want normal damage. There's all these different things you might want for different reasons. But the point I'm trying to make is that in a perfect world, you can pick a sort of generic formation like wedge, like arch. You can get a bunch of armaments when you pull for that formation that are good for each troop type, infantry, cavalry, archers. And you can switch the armaments to a new formation. This is very relevant. We'll maybe talk more about this. There's a new system to switch it to a new formation, but you're going to need a currency for that. It's going to be kind of limited. All right. They're up over here. They're called conversion stones. So in a perfect world, we're going to find for you something that meets all these conditions. It's going to be able to take advantage of the fact that maybe you can move in on just one or two formations, since that'll be easier, cheaper to do. It's going to take advantage of the fact that maybe we're not going to have you go into like a million different, museum buffs because you're going to have limited currency over here. And we're going to take advantage of super powerful heroes because they are disproportionately good. And there are, in fact, early game commanders you can pair with that are better than others. So let's build your first army. In the early game, you're going to have access to several building blocks. You're going to have access to gold key commanders. I can show you that. And you're going to have access to VIP commanders. At the very start of the game, not a lot you're going to have to work with. But some of these gold key commanders are pretty powerful and are pretty cool building blocks. We'll come back to which one of these commanders I think is worth bringing with you into the endgame. And I think the answer will surprise some people. But the first army we must prepare for is going to be the Archer army. In the endgame, you're going to use QSH. Even if you start playing today at the time this is recorded, I'm quite confident you'll be using QSH. This is the kind of commander that I think will be good for like probably 4 or 5 years. I don't know. Maybe that's an overstatement. But he's just so busted, man. He's so good right now. So, good news for you is that one of the first commanders that's going to show up in the Wheel of Fortune is Isong. So you're going to move in on Isong as one of your first legendary commander investments. Passively, you're going to work on a commander to pair him with. You're going to get him from gold keys. You could use Thutmose. Thutmose plus Isong is an amazing early game Archer March. If you were using an epic, you could use Herman Prime. Okay? Pair with Isong. You also could use Isong and El Cid. That's a classic combo, but I think Thutmose is kind of the better pick. But you're in the end game, your goal is to get to QSH and Isong. That covers your archers. But for cavalry, we're in a weird spot. We can only speculate the direction cavalry are going to go. I think it's going to be this new effect called a combo attack. Combo attacks are pretty powerful. They're affected by bonuses to normal damage, and you're doing, as it sort of is implying, lots of attacks. The thing that you can do in the early game, and you just hope and pray that it'll work for you in the end game, is VIP Minamoto. VIP Minamoto is relatively cheap as far as legendary commanders go. Going to cost you a couple $100 to go and max him out. So I'm not saying it's cheap, but to go and do that, you'll now have Minamoto at the ready to pair with someone. Minamoto is pretty solid single target damage, unlike Isong, who is meta in the end game and has a museum buff. He does have a very good museum buff, but he's not meta. But you will use him forever rallying barb forts. So your game plan for cavalry, especially if you're a spender, is that you're not just going to get a couple skills on Minamoto and use him in the early game, which, like, I did. I just use him for barb forts now, but I do use him, by the way, on my small account. On my main account, of course, he's maxed. The thing is that when you get to the end game, it's not like you're going to be able to max all the commanders all of a sudden. We'll talk about that a little bit, but the point I want to make here is that you're going to go in and having a cavalry commander maxed, even if you work on some cavalry commander slowly over time and work on their skills, Minamoto is likely to be the building block that you will use for that, okay? A lot of great pairings for Minamoto. There is, of course, Cao Cao. You've got commanders like Baibars in the very early game, who's going to do big AoE damage, but that damage is not reduced based on hitting multiple targets. This is kind of a pro tip. You'll notice that a lot of these big area of effect damage commanders, they're going to have that damage reduce as you hit more targets. His damage does not do that, all right? So we got you a cav army. We got you an archer army. What about the infantry? Well, we don't yet know what busted endgame infantry is going to be at the sort of QSH level of power. But we do know that the endgame commanders do this thing called smite damage for infantry. And this is based off of normal attack damage boosts. It's like skill damage, but it's based off a normal attack damage boost, all right? So there is a commander you can work on in the early game that will set you up for success there. And that commander is going to be none other. I don't have it maxed on my small account. I should probably go back to my big account, but it's Pyrrhus. I got some crazy reports about Pyrrhus in early KVKs, and I was surprised. He is going to make it so you do some damage factor and boost your normal damage. So if you pair with him with a commander that does smite damage, their damage will be enhanced. Pretty cool. He gives you health. He gives you march speed. He gives you yet another normal attack damage boost, which is major. He's got shielding opportunities, an attack boost. He makes it so you take less skill damage. You deal more damage if you've gotten a shield. The dude's kit is actually pretty legit. He's definitely designed to enhance someone else's damage. All right. So the way that you would work on him is not actually to put a bunch of legendary commander sculptures into him. I don't think that's worth doing. The reason I say that that's not worth doing is because gold key commanders, once you get to the end game, which is KVK season 3, when you're going to start to get access to them, you're going to have plenty of other commanders that are higher power level you'd prefer to work on, like QSH. So you want to save all your sculptures for the moment you're working on QSH, your Universal Legendary Commander sculptures. And in the meantime, you'll use gold keys to advance these commanders. And then you'll pair with other commanders like, for example, you could pair with Sun Tzu. Epic Commander, AoE damage. Not the best synergy, but Sun Tzu is honestly kind of the GOAT from the early game. Okay? There are other commanders that you could pair with as well. Bjorn Ironside is an option. You could pair with Martel, although I don't exactly love it. Yeah, you've got some options here. And, look, there are a lot of commanders that you will be tempted to work on that show up. But now that we've got this like QSH extra level of power, just to show you a few reports that I saved that I thought were kind of emblematic, right? Like, it's like totally crazy stuff. You want to be ready to move in on that. And so this order I'm giving you, I think best prepares you for that. Now, if you want to go kind of with the above and beyond here, you could also work on a siege army. The really interesting thing about a siege army is that the equipment for siege, you could actually do in a way that does not use materials that you need for other things. Let me explain. When you go and work on most of your equipment, you're going to need stone, you're going to need wood, and you're going to need leather, right? But what about bone? Bone is typically used for gathering stuff. But interestingly, the blue gathering stuff has a ton of siege stats. It's actually kind of wild. So if you wanted to build a siege army, you could start with this stuff and get a few complementary pieces. I'm not saying it's going to be the best, but what I'm suggesting is that it's something you could work on over time. You could use the conversion stones to move over armaments rather than working specifically on the ranged formation once that shows up for you. And that, I think, positions you to ultimately move in on a full siege army with the latest and greatest, hottest stuff, which we might be getting some new range commanders really soon at the time of this recording when you get into the end game. All right. So at the end of the day, the grand oversimplification is that at this moment in time, work on Esong. That is a place where if you put Universal Legendary Commander sculptures, it will be reasonable. You can use them in the early game, and then you get to the late game, and you're going to be really happy with his performance with QSH. With that said, I think you want to save as many legendary commander sculptures as possible because now more than ever, the newest commanders are incredibly powerful. And I believe you will even get a commander swap event that shows up when you get to Season of Conquest, or maybe it's even KVK Season 3. I will update my pinned comment with that information because you will be able to switch the skills you have from one commander to another. So theoretically, you could go work on an early game commander and switch it over to a late game commander. The weirdness there is that, well, I mean, you do switch the skill levels, right? So if you, for example, went and put sculptures into Pyrrhus and you thought, oh yeah, I'll just switch them when I get to the end game. I mean, sure, but the problem is that then you can't use Pyrrhus anymore. He's not going to have any skills on him. Now, he's a gold key commander. That may not matter. We'll kind of see. A lot of the meta is up in the air. But the one bet that's for sure is that Esong is still the GOAT, man. Yeah, you can still work on Esong. And then you can pair with QSH and you're set up for success. And if you took nothing else from this video, is that you should save for the end game. Being able to support a diversity of commander types is powerful because then whatever is the strongest, you can make sure that you're running it. And although that comes at a potential cost in the end game, you're going to get this thing called crystal technology. You can actually focus your crystal technology on one troop type now, which is really wild. I think there's a lot of advantage to being able to play whatever's hottest as soon as it lands. So I would go for that diversity. You make one equipment set for infantry, archers, cavalry. You work on one good set of armaments for infantry, archers, cavalry, converting it over to different formations as you need to. And it's not going to be something you can do instantly, or it will require spending to do. But I think that is going to set you up for some long-term success. And the bonus project is the Siege Army, which you can use epic commanders to start. And they're right over here. Catherine and also Narcissus. Okay. And when you use these commanders in the right situation, you can get some pretty darn good trades. All right. You enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here, subscribe. Hopefully this was helpful. And if you want to see what the commander swap event looked like for endgame players when they gave it to us, I can show you that in the end screen. You can see exactly what I mean. I don't know if it will work exactly the same as when you get to the endgame, but at least this will give you an idea of what that's like. And a big thank you again to the makers of Rise of Kingdoms for sponsoring this video.